This program is presented by University of California Television. Like what you learn? Visit our website or follow us on Facebook and Twitter to keep up with the latest UCTV programs.
So this is what's going to happen tonight. The students in the finals have already prepared a written business brief that the judges have had a chance to look at. They've had a little less than a week to review them. We're going to call one team onto the stage at a time. They're going to have 10 minutes to do their investor pitch. The judges will have a chance to ask questions, one question per judge. When the judges have made their decision, we're going to call everybody back in and we're going to give out the awards. These are the evaluation criteria, relatively standard for a new venture competition. We look for certain things that we've seen in successful businesses. The awards we're giving out tonight, a grand prize of $10,000. The teams are on two tracks. We're going to start with Market Pull, end with Tech Push, and alternate. The Tech Push teams have invented some technology. It's typically grad students that we're not sure what the business is at the beginning, but typically they're working on big ideas with big potential payoffs. The Market Pull teams tend to come from the social sciences, from the Bren School. They've identified a market need and have developed a solution to meet that need. It's typically a website or software as a service, something in the cloud, something like that. We have a couple of, the Tech Push prize is higher because this is the College of Engineering. We value those technologists a little bit more for the purpose of the competition. If Market Pull pulls it off, they still end up winning the most money if they run the tables on prizes. There's a people's choice. We're going to put you to work. Once the presentations are done, you're going to choose a winner of $5,000. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that when we're done. And then we're going to talk about the Ealings Prize. This year I'm going to call it the Ealings Surprise, because we're going to do it at the end, and we're not going to tell you what the criteria are until the end. So you're going to want to stick around. There's an interesting story behind this prize that we will share with you at the end. In-kind sponsors, in addition to the cash prizes, our sponsors have offered up an incredible array of prizes for these students to help them get started. This ranges from Stradling, that's going to offer legal services to the first places on both tracks. SoCal IP Law Group is going to help them get started with their IP. The GEM prize is one of the more valuable prizes. This is a new incubator that's opening in Goleta. They're going to give us 6 months free rent to a team of their choice. We're going to pick that team after the competition. And then I wanted to point out Sonos. Every person in the finals gets a little Sonos speaker. So we're giving away almost $40,000 in cash. The only thing that the students haven't been able to stop talking about is this speaker. They all get one, and we keep saying, you realize you may win $20,000. Yeah, I know, but tell me more about the speaker. You realize the speaker costs $200. You can go to the Sonos website and buy one with the winnings. Yeah, but it's not the same when you win it. So I'm now going to introduce the judges. You've got bios of the judges in your programs. I'm going to tell you how I know the judges. So first we have Eric Kanowski. Eric is one of the alpha entrepreneurs in Santa Barbara. He was a founder of a very early software company in Santa Barbara and has been a serial entrepreneur ever since. The reason why we have Eric was a judge in the very first new venture competition that Inogen won. And the only reason why we have Eric here is he's in between companies. He just sold a company, and we were talking in the judges' room. He's actually had time to do things like have coffee with friends and talk for a couple of hours that he doesn't normally have a chance to do. So we're thrilled to have Eric here. Sitting next to Eric is Chris Philippe. Chris is one of the guys behind GEM. I've known Chris for a few years. When we had an open house for GEM when we were just kind of trying to get it on its feet, and there was a story in Newshawk about it. And Chris emailed me and said, I want to talk to you about GEM. So we met for coffee, we talked about GEM. I told him a little bit about it. He said, I'm in. I said, that's great. What does that mean? He said, $50,000. I said, okay, $50,000 over what period? He said, a year, for 3 years. So that's $150,000. He said, yeah, but, and I'm thinking, all right, here comes the but. But the university and the city of Goleta have to match me. And we took that challenge on, and the university and the city matched Chris. We raised another $300,000. The Santa Barbara Foundation came in with another $50,000. We've now raised over $500,000. Doug, raise your hand or stand up. Doug Lynch is the executive director of the incubator. When it gets started, you need to go visit it. I'm sure we'll have an open house. We're really excited about it. July 9th. Glenn Duval. I met Glenn a few months ago. There was a big entrepreneurship powwow in LA where they invited every university in Southern California, but they forgot to invite us. And Glenn is a UCSB Foundation board member, and he politely pointed out to the folks who were organizing things, you need to have UCSB there. And we got to go to this event. We got to participate, and we've been involved ever since with the folks in LA, the entrepreneurial scene, thanks to Glenn. Glenn is a successful entrepreneur on his own, also an alum and a UCSB Foundation member. And then Ron Chiarello. Ron I met 2 summers ago. John Loftus from Alumni Relations said, there's this guy in family camp. I'd like you to meet him. I think you'd like him. He's got a couple of degrees in physics. Really interesting guy. And I'm thinking, physics PhD, what are we going to talk about? So Ron came over, we met, I think we talked for 2 hours. We talked about our families, we talked about where we were from, we talked about everything except physics or entrepreneurship. And Ron is one of the most incredible guys, a career as an academic, a researcher, and an entrepreneur. And he's helping a UCSB professor start a company now, as we speak. So we have these judges, we get 4 every year. This group I'm especially excited to present these teams to.
Hello, everyone. All right, we'll just dive right in. Our journey begins in a restaurant with a long and boring menu. It's plain. It's not interactive. And it's not really that fun to look at. And from here, we started making questions. How can we improve upon something like this? You know, how about making the ability to be able to have somebody look at the menu like this and save their personal preferences, and then look at them from any point in time and be able to go back and make sure that they know exactly which item they've ordered? How about being able to go through and filter out a menu based on your dietary needs? So say you're a vegetarian, get rid of all the meat. And how about being able to even just send your favorite items of a restaurant to somebody that you may have been a friend with before, and so that they can know what you like eating? From here, we started thinking, and we realized that there's a better way to create a menu. Being able to find a menu up on an application is our main goal. So we can find a menu, pick an item, and pay, all with one click. And on top of that, add in promotional deals so that you can go to these restaurants and get all the things that they want to give you. And from here, we really wanted to find out if we were the only people that were looking for menus out there. And so we went and did 200 customer interviews. And from these 200 customer interviews, we found that we weren't the only people looking for menus. In fact, there are over 34,000 people looking for individual restaurants or individual menus in Santa Barbara alone. And these are just from 7 restaurants. There are 990,000 restaurants in the United States. So you can just imagine how many people are looking for menus. And so we decided, what are we going to do about it? Why don't we give them somewhere to go? Introducing Echo, a website and mobile platform that allows you to order like never before. How does it work? As a diner, you can go to any restaurant you want, find a restaurant, pull up their menu on your smartphone. From there, you can go ahead and pay and order with one click. And from there, you can also pull in the promotional deals the restaurants already want to give us for giving them their loyalty. And if you're a restaurant, we allow you the ability to go onto our website and create your own personally branded menu. And from here, this menu can be put up on your individual website, and then put up on your individual website. And then anyone can see it, as long as they have the internet, from a mobile device or a computer. Pretty awesome idea. And checking in with a snowshoe stamp. We figured that, having the ability to, order from anywhere may not cut it. So we decided to implement snowshoe stamps. Snowshoe stamps is a small piece of plastic that allows you to give a fingerprint to any individual restaurant. And what this allows us to do is put a snowshoe stamp inside of a restaurant and have people with smartphones, because they can be read by any touchscreen device, go up with their smartphone, push it onto this stamp, and be able to bring up a menu. And from this mobile menu, they can go ahead and order, and they can go ahead and pay with one click. And we kind of realized that what we're really doing here is trying to enhance the customer experience. And so we decided to make a mission statement to enhance the customer experience in restaurants.
So our mission statement, sounds like it's not working, but I'll keep going. Our mission statement is powerful, it's ambitious, and it has a lot of room to grow. But we had to ask ourselves how we're going to make money, because that's what this is all about. This is a business. So we created two revenue models. One is a subscription-based model, and it's called Echo Basic. It allows a restaurant to go online, create a mobile menu that's custom branded to their business. Through this mobile menu, customers now can interact with the restaurant in a different way that's never been done before. Second, we have Echo Premium, where restaurants upgrade from Echo Basic and start accepting orders from their customers. We'll charge the customer 5% per transaction, so a typical meal that's $10 will now cost $10.50. Then we will charge the restaurants 3% to cover the 2.9% transaction fee that we undergo from our payment processors. So how big is this opportunity? As we all know, the restaurant industry is massive. It's humongous. As Chase already said, there's 990,000 restaurants in the United States alone. So if we captured every single one of those restaurants, we're looking at $3 billion a year. But that's unrealistic. Of course, that's not going to happen. So if we hone down a little bit and we look at our served addressable market, we can make $240 million a year. And if we hone it down even more and say we can only capture 5 or 10% of the urban smartphone users, then we're looking at $130 million a year. So how do we stack up against our competitors? Our competitors offer a range of services, including delivery and takeout. But there's a number of things they do not offer that we do. One of the main ones being branded mobile menus. We believe that restaurants really care about this stuff. And so we gave them that ability. Second, saving preferences. Customers go to the same restaurants often, repeatedly, and during the week. They buy the same coffee every morning when they go to Starbucks. So we should give them the ability to save their preferences so when they show up at the restaurant, they can check in and order with a single click. Lastly, none of these services are offering loyalty discounts. Restaurants want to reward their customers. Every restaurant we talk to, they want to reward their customers. So let's give them the ability to do that. Here's an example of what it looks like. Grubhub's on the left, where it's a simple, plain, boring menu, and it's the same for every single restaurant. Our service creates a custom-branded mobile menu for them. So what's our plan for the future? First, we want to create a mobile menu for every single restaurant in Santa Barbara. There's over 500 restaurants. Once we create these mobile menus, we'll know exactly what restaurants want. From this, we can create a host of templates that restaurants can use to make a seamless, easy to interact with mobile menu. From here, we want to integrate with point-of-sale systems. Now, this is a hard process. It's expensive. It takes 1 to 2 years. If it doesn't work out for us, we have other plans. Typically, Grubhub and SB Menus and OrderUp, they all just email the restaurant so that they can receive their orders. We can do the same thing until this point-of-sale integration happens. And if it doesn't work out, we move on. Lastly, we need to move into bigger cities and metropolitan areas where there's more of the customers that we want, our target customers. And so we're looking to expand into San Francisco, Los Angeles, and New York. So who are we as a team? We are passionate individuals that really care about the service that we're providing. We've gone out to restaurants, and we've seen the fire in their eyes. They love their business, they love their brand, and they love the food they make. So we're passionate equally with them. We want to follow that mission the same way they do. So this is Chase Racich. He's business development. He's the guy going door to these restaurants to make sales happen. I'm Brian Morton. I'm the web developer and the designer. And this is Eric Goodman, our computer engineer, who just got his master's. So congratulations to him. We believe that good business makes good money. So we put the customer first. What that means to us is that if we put the customer first, the money will come as a byproduct. So we're making these restaurants happy. SB Menus, Grubhub, these other companies are charging them between 8 and 14%, which is a ridiculous amount. And restaurants are really having trouble with their bottom line because of it. We're putting them first and ensuring that they have a great experience at restaurants for customers, as well as the restaurants have a seamless experience with us. Lastly, I want to conclude by saying thank you to all the restaurants in Santa Barbara that we know and love, especially Buddha Bowls, who has helped us through the prototyping process. Lastly, thank you to the TMP program for putting us on, and UCSB, and all the friends and family that have supported us throughout this process. We are Echo, and we're making mobile ordering easy.
Okay, thank you, Echo. Judges, questions? Chris?
Yeah. Have you done any price sensitivity analysis to see if 5% is too high, too low, if 3% to the restaurant is too high, too low? I mean, what kind of data do you have to support those numbers?
So through our customer development process, we found that customers are willing to pay the value of this. What we're doing is basically taking a typical $10 meal at a restaurant that would appear on the menu as $10, and we're just inflating the price in our app 5%. So really, it just becomes from $10 to $10.50. And the customers usually don't mind that. They don't even notice it.
You can call up the restaurant and just get the order taken, and you don't have to pay 5%, right?
Yeah, but picking up the phone and calling is not as easy of an experience as paying with one click from your phone. After I save my preferences and I know that I love that latte at Starbucks and I always get a blueberry muffin or whatever it might be, I can now just go on my phone, open the app, and click and order, instead of having to call in and place an order.
Have you seen any of the restaurant chains doing this themselves? And what's your competitive answer to that, if they are?
Yeah, so there are a few out there that are trying to put iPads on their tables to allow people to order through it, so it's kind of taking the waiters out of the question. A lot of the sit-down restaurants that we talk to, however, they don't want to do this. They actually want the customer experience to stay in place in which they interact with the waiters and waitresses. And many of the restaurants said that. There are, with the exception of a few restaurants that are trying to implement these iPads to allow that to happen.
I'll add to that, both Stacks and Buffalo Wild Wings have seen very good criticism from people ordering there. They basically just put an iPad on the table where you're allowed to order, and this allows the people that are visiting this restaurant to basically go into the store and not have to deal with waiting for something to come to them. So they can order their order their food and order their drinks and not have to wait for that second round to come. They can just place the orders there. And so people have really liked this idea of being able to mobily order inside of a restaurant. So we're trying to bring this to every user outside of a restaurant through a mobile phone.
Right, I was thinking Starbucks is playing up their mobile app. I'm not a Starbucks customer. I don't know exactly what it does, but I see people using it all the time to pay and potentially to order. I mean, I would view that as a big competitive threat. If Starbucks has success with that, who's next?
Yeah, so it is. And Starbucks, what they recently came out with in their new application is using Bluetooth so you can shake and pay. Initially, our idea started out with the Bluetooth ability so I could walk into the proximity of the restaurant and it would immediately ping me and say, welcome to Starbucks, what would you like? And that's kind of our vision for the future. But at the same time, Starbucks app is limited to only Starbucks customers. Our app is going to be open to all restaurants and all customers. So we're going to have a customer base that allows them to process orders through everywhere. So it's also a sales channel for restaurants.
And on top of that, for the customers themselves, you would need an individual app per restaurant. So if you were wanting to go to Starbucks, Backyard Bowls, and Buffalo Wild Wings, you would need a separate application for each one. And so you could see how this could get confusing, or it could just kind of clutter up your iPhone, which we all hate. So being able to have one place where someone can go and order through into multiple different restaurants with custom branding for each of them is highly sought after. Go ahead.
Just one, how do you deal with alcohol? So let's say I get into my parent, I'm underage, and I get into my parent's app and I order, beer from Eureka to go. How do you deal with that?
Well, so when you come into the restaurant, I mean, the way it's currently handled, you would still have to present your ID when actually picking up the alcohol.
Yeah, I don't think we're not going to be working with alcoholic
Not in immediate
industry in the immediate time period. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they can choose what they want to put on their menu, they can just omit alcohol, which we'd have to do in the beginning until we figure out how that exactly works.
Okay.
It would be nice to have people being able to order from the bar, and that was one of our initial ideas as well, but we're not sure how the alcohol licenses work and everything else within a restaurant.
Do you, are you geographically bounded in some way in your app that allows you to just pick local restaurants, or is it just the restaurants you choose off of a list or something?
Yeah, definitely. So initially it's going to come up with the restaurants in your zip code through GPS. But the snowshoe stamp kind of enables us that if I walk into a restaurant that I've never been to before, I can check in with the snowshoe stamp and bring up their mobile menu. So that's kind of the other aspect of it, where I can skip that searching and finding in the restaurant that I want to find.
Now, do you have live customers right now, like restaurants that are doing this with you? Have you tested this?
Yeah, so Brutables is one of the ones that we're testing it with currently. We're working on getting payment initiated so we can actually really go out there and test it. We've built probably about 10 or 15 mobile menus, and restaurants respond well to them. But we haven't actually gone out and processed any orders yet, which is what we're working on right now.
So, I like the idea. Great presentation. Thank you. It seems to me, though, that you have a sales execution challenge. When you're not selling to chains, you have a lot of restaurants in the cities that you mentioned alone. So do you have a sales strategy for, the diverse customer base?
Exactly. Well, when we're not doing transactions, we're really relying on the fact that people are going to want to use mobile menus, and restaurants are going to want to get their mobile menus out there that are personally branded. So at the $5 subscription per month, we're going to be able to just bring that in, like, initially as our, our main revenue stream in sales. However, when we do become into like slow periods of time, I guess our sales are going to be coming more through being able to allow, like what SB Menus does, and get promotional deals out there, because we will be almost a sales channel for the restaurant itself. And so being able to get their discounts out to the people that serve them is going to be highly valuable.
Another thing about the revenue model that's interesting is, I like that you chose a $10 price point, but if you're dining like Glenn does, you could be spending several $100s and
Nice, Glenn.
So 5% of several $100s gets to be a significant portion of the bill, right? So do you have a scaling or a cap or in your revenue model that you consider?
Yeah, so typically, initially we're going to start out targeting non-sit-down restaurants, which means that typically people aren't going to be paying hundreds of dollars for a meal. Usually it's going to be under $10. So people won't really notice that. When we target sit-down restaurants, which is a vision for our future, we hope to have just a payment on your phone in a sit-down restaurant without the mobile menus and et cetera. So you can check in with your table number and pay from your phone to get you out of the restaurant and increase the flow in the restaurant. But that's later down the line, and we're not sure how we're going to capitalize on the revenue from that.
So the revenue projections are based on essentially, let's say, sub $20 transactions?
No, so it's actually not based on that. It's actually based on per capita restaurant expenditure from people. And it's actually very conservative because we took the number of the US population and just divided that by the number of restaurants. And basically there's $680 billion in revenue from restaurant sales alone. And if we divide that by the population, we get the per capita revenue.
Who's going to assume your QoS when you order and it's not there when you get there? That you or the restaurant that's going to take the heat?
We'd have to look into it, of course, but we would probably refund them because customer service is very important to us.
Yeah, I think it's really important because the restaurant's going to not like that.
Of course.
I guess initially we could also have signing up for Echo mobile ordering. You could undergo the fact that if your food isn't ready for you, we're hoping to have the ability for the people inside of the restaurant to be able to give you an idea of when your food is going to be there based on either 3 buttons or hopefully later in time GPS location. And from that, if the person comes in early, it's kind of their problem, and they kind of undergo the fact that since they are ordering outside of the restaurant, they're gonna have to deal with that. But I guess we'll look more into that for you.
Okay, we have to call it there. Right. Thank you very much, Echo.
Thank you, judges. Thank you, everyone.
So when you and I think about bleeding, we think of an open cut, something we put a bandage over, and if it's really bad, maybe it ends up with a couple of stitches. Ask a trauma doctor about what bleeding is, and they'll give you something like this: a serious condition where the injury kicks off a race to shut the wound before the patient loses too much blood and dies. Now, unfortunately, we often lose that race. And since 2001, roughly half of all US combat fatalities have occurred as a direct result of blood loss. Overall in the US, roughly 45,000 lives are lost each year because we can't provide adequate care and the patient bleeds out. Now, doctors will tell you that some of the hardest wounds to treat are internal because they don't have direct access. And this is actually how Princess Diana died. She survived the car accident only to die several hours later because of massive blood loss. 15 years later, we're still utilizing the same strategies. We want to get the patient in the hospital and into surgery. But in the best case scenario, it takes about an hour. More likely, it takes a couple hours. And in a situation where seconds can mean the difference between life and death, that's just too long. So since Diana's death, doctors have added 2 drugs to their arsenal for treating internal hemorrhage. The first, NovoSeven, is designed to treat trauma in hemophiliac patients. Kcentra is designed as an antidote for patients who are on anticoagulants like warfarin. The problem, though, is that when doctors use these in general trauma patients, they can result in a heart attack or a stroke. And because of this, doctors are reticent to use these drugs unless the patient is critical. At Cayuga Biotech, we break clotting down into 3 distinct phases. First, the initiation of clotting, then the amplification of that phase, and finally, the formation of the physical clot. Current treatments focus on initiating clotting, and that's the problem. When you put the drug into blood, that's how you can get a heart attack or a stroke. We're following a revolutionary method that focuses on the later stages of clotting, the amplification and the formation of the physical clot. We work with the body to target injuries, and we seek to amplify the body's own process. The drug that we actually use, polyphosphate, targets a protein that's only found in the body during clotting. And what polyphosphate does is it serves to accelerate the process so that you form quicker, stronger clots and minimize blood loss. So we've tested our drug at several different injury points. Right after the onset of injury, we can reduce clotting by nearly a minute when compared to the natural body's clotting ability. As the wound gets more severe, we were actually able to cut clotting times. And even under the most critical injuries, where the patient has lost 75% of their blood, we were still able to get clots within 2 minutes. That's a great step forward. So let me show you how it actually works in the body. Your patient comes in, he's suspected of an internal injury. He's given these particles, and they travel through the bloodstream until they find an injury. If there is an injury, and the body has already begun to clot, this drug accelerates that process. Where there is no injury, there's no clot, no heart attack, no stroke. And because of this, we feel that our drug has the potential to minimize side effects compared to what doctors do right now. Secondly, our drug is effective. We've seen that even under extremely critical conditions, we can still form clots. And finally, our drug is extremely versatile. It's stable at room temperature. Kcentra and NovoSeven have to be refrigerated. That means you can't use them unless you're at a hospital. Our drug is stable at room temperatures, and this means that you can get it out to patients in the field, patients when they first arrive at the hospital. And the quicker you can get a drug into the patient, the more likely it is that they'll survive. Additionally, our drug can be used both externally and internally. And what this means is that we may have the first universal treatment for bleeding. Now, the overall market was roughly $3 billion for hemorrhage treatment. And in 2017, it's expected to grow to about $5 billion. We break the market down into 3 distinct forms. First, topical, things like bandages. The second are mechanical, things that doctors use like clamps to actually shut wounds. Finally, Kcentra and NovoSeven make up the IV drug portion. They make about $2 billion annually, so it's about 67% of the market, yet they're only used in about 5% of trauma patients. So what this means is that for injectable drugs, it's really an unmet market, and someone's going to come along and seize it. So besides the current treatments, there's another company, Arsenal Medical, that's developing a foam that will actually form a cast around your abdomen to stop blood from leaking out. Now, it sounds like a great idea if you're bleeding to death, but who wants to be filled with foam? I mean, the surgeon still has to go in and pull it out of your body, and the surgeon has to make sure that he gets every little piece. So while it's a great idea, we think Arsenal has a limited viability in terms of its market function. Where we come in is that our drug can treat internal injuries and external injuries. More importantly, it's stable at room temperature and has the potential to minimize side effects. And what this means is that we'll get it into more patients quicker, and more patients will survive and have lesser injuries than what they do now. In terms of intellectual property, we filed a patent application in the US as well as a PCT in March of this year. We also work with our collaborators at the University of Illinois to license their patents on polyphosphate. And their patents have already been approved in 5 countries, the US, Canada, Germany, Great Britain, and France. Now, the FDA has certain milestones that every drug company must meet in order to reach the market. The first is drug discovery. You need to know what you have and what it does. The second is preclinical testing, and once that's successful, the FDA can approve you for clinical trials. And after 3 clinical trials, then the FDA approves you to reach the market. At Cayuga Biotech, we've already completed that first stage, and in the coming months, we're moving into preclinical trials. Now, based on these milestones, we've estimated our value at each stage, and what we found is that the preclinical and clinical test, once we reach that phase, our value increases dramatically. Now, we have 2 partners that will really help us get our drug to market. The first is the military. We wouldn't actually be here if it wasn't for a DARPA award to study internal hemorrhage. Secondly, we've also received an Institute of Collaborative Biotechnologies grant to begin our preclinical testing. Now, the military is invested in this problem, and there's a great reason. They found that since 2001, 1,500 soldiers would have survived if there was better medical treatment. On the other side, we plan to partner with a larger pharmaceutical company. The recent trend in pharmaceuticals is actually to cut their own R&D departments, which makes them more reliant on academic institutions and startups to fund that drug discovery pipeline. By cutting their R&D departments, though, they have a lot more money, and they're more willing to fund clinical trials, as well as the money it takes to actually commercialize a drug. Baxter, Novo Nordisk, and J&J are just some of the few companies that are active in this field. Now, no startup is anything without its team. And so Tracy and myself are graduate students who actively conduct research into blood clotting. Our marketing and financial analyst, Debbie G, has previous startup experience. She's worked for interns as well as previously competed in the NBC. We're also utilizing 2 doctors as advisors, Scott Hammond and Lisa Ferrigno. And what they're helping is that so we can seamlessly translate our drug from the laboratory into medical use. And finally, our research scientist, Galen Stuckey, he's an eminent materials chemist who was given the DoD's Combat Casualty Care Award for his work on the development of combat gauze. So we built an impressive team around an exciting new technology that we feel has the potential to revolutionize hemorrhage care by reaching a currently unmet market, in addition to saving countless lives. At Cayuga Biotech, we know that injuries happen. It's our job to make sure that you live to tell the story. Thank you.
Okay, judges.
I'll start on. So that's very impressive. Boy, I hope you're successful. How can you be confident that there are no side effects or what your side effects will be? Because when I found through the drug discovery process all the way to the FDA, it's side effects that just can kill a drug from getting approved. What gives you confidence that your product, this early in its stage, has no side effects?
You know which one? So there's a couple things. First off, whereas Novo-7 and Kcentra, they're designed to initiate clotting, the active mechanism that we use actually needs an ongoing clot for it to work.
So if we just inject it into the blood, into normal blood, it won't clot. So that's the first thing. Secondly, the issues with NovoSeven, the current treatments, is that they can form these microclots globally, and the big issue with that is just dosage. So these are, what we want to do in our preclinical test is determine the dosage, even for specific injuries, because a head injury is different from a chest injury is different from an abdominal injury. And so a lot of those is, we know the drug parameters that we're looking for in preclinical, and it's if we can match that.
Now, tell me about the product. What is your value add to the patent that you're coming off of at the University of Illinois? What is it that you do that they don't already, and how are you going to commercialize that?
Mm-hmm. So polyphosphate, it's actually produced in the body, and it has a half-life of about 90 minutes. So where we come in is we're figuring out a nanoparticle delivery that can minimize the breakdown and allow it to function longer, as well as better target injuries.
So in the plan you sent ahead of time, it shows a 10-year, roughly 10-year path to revenue, to sales, based on the FDA process. Have you guys considered going to Europe, getting CE mark, and being able to generate revenue sooner in order to fund, or at least partially fund, the FDA process?
Right. So that's actually one of the key differences, is that in Europe, for the initial clinical trials, you don't need to go through as many hoops, and so we're definitely open with beginning our clinical trials in Europe and doing that as well as in the US.
So my observation is there's a lot going on here in terms of the team. So you have UIC, UCSB, J&J, Baxter, with, I can't tell if the agendas are aligned, but do you have agreements with everybody? You don't have a CEO yet. So who's leading the effort to make sure that it's not a project, but really a business?
So right now, I'm sort of the CEO, but ideally, once we get a CEO with FDA experience, I will move over to a Chief Science Officer. Baxter, the J&J, those were just companies that are active in the field. We don't actually have a partnership with them. And so it's, right now, we're just working with the University of Illinois as well as the doctors on our team to make sure that the end goal is the drug that a doctor will use.
So the graphic you showed in the beginning that showed the effectiveness of this treatment, that's generated at UIC?
No, that was actually generated on this campus.
Great.
Now, assuming you get a bunch of money, what are you going to do with it?
Preclinical testing. So we're going to work, the FDA has these contract labs. One of them is Sinclair in Missouri. And their job is essentially to take drugs and do the preclinical FDA approval. So they know the statistics the FDA wants. They know how it's going to be packaged. So we plan to work with them. And then once that's done, it goes to the FDA for the IND.
And you have experience in this?
We don't, but one of the doctors that's advising us, as well as when we add a toxicology director, they'll either have experience specifically with running the experiments or working with a contract lab like Sinclair.
And is the end game for you guys to get your FDA approval and build a huge sales force and be out there selling this, to partner with someone who has a sales force who's in the right places? Or do you think, 5 years down the road, you have good preclinical results and you just sell the company to one of those big players?
So most biotech companies end up as an acquisition, especially now the market is really changing, and so the big companies are becoming bigger by buying out some of the biotech in early stage. We could potentially do an IPO around phase 2 clinical trials, but I think last year was a banner year that doubled the previous record high, and it was 13 companies. So what happens is either a partnership or an acquisition between sort of the IND and phase 2. That's typically what happens.
So
Any more questions?
So it sounds like you're actually a delivery mechanism as opposed to a drug company. Is that correct? And then would you then required to pay a license to UCSB and the University of Illinois if what you're providing is really nano delivery mechanism versus the drug per se?
So we will end up paying the UC system as well as University of Illinois. We've actually already signed the license agreement with UCSB, and we're very close to signing this similar agreement with the University of Illinois. Could you repeat?
Yeah, well, that's fine. So essentially, though, you're more of a delivery system, from what I can understand. Is that correct?
Our focus is on the delivery, but yeah.
But the product is both, right?
Correct.
It's generic.
The product is polyphosphate delivered by a nanotechnology device?
Correct. And we can actually, so the drug discovery is long and there are risks, and we intend to mitigate those risks by, number one, moving into potentially a topical device. So things like QuikClot and Celox that are currently on the market are considered FDA Class 2 devices. And so that would be a quicker way to get to the market, but it is a much smaller, more competitive market than internal drugs.
We have time for one more question. No? We're good? Okay, thank you very much, Cayuga Biotech.
Hi, thanks everyone for showing up. We are bottle branders, and we are helping people to bring the brewery home. And we are working in the craft beer industry. And we help small and medium-sized craft breweries sell more beer. And we do that by helping them by selling products that address some quality and branding concerns that they currently have. So we're really excited to be working in the craft industry because of the growth. Quite honestly, it's experienced 18% growth last year. It's averaged double-digit growth over the last decade. It now accounts for a $14 billion industry. It's 14% of the overall beer market, whereas in 2005, it was less than 4%. And most of that growth is being driven by small and medium-sized breweries. And the proliferation of those breweries is akin to the wine market. It's what's happened there, where consumers are starting to move towards higher quality, but also smaller labels. So you're seeing all these breweries grow. You're seeing almost 3,000 breweries today. That's almost a 4,000% increase from where that was in 1980. And there's a problem that's come up with that. See, most of these small breweries don't have access to bottling or canning equipment. It's just too expensive, cost prohibitive for them to purchase that equipment. So they don't have a way to access the home market. So much of the growth that you're seeing in the craft industry is not necessarily being reflected in the home consumer market. There's a gap there, and we're hoping to fill that gap. In order to do that, we've assembled our team. I'm Max Ellington, the founder and the CEO of this project. Harish Prather here is in charge of finance and marketing. Lance Lowenberg on the end is in charge of our product design and engineering. And Ryan Wilson is in charge of our graphic design and media. So in order to understand this problem, we're going to need to tell you a quick story about how these breweries are currently addressing this problem. So we're going to take you back to the mid-1980s. Charlie Otto founded a brewery in western Wyoming, and that brewery was doing really well. He was selling a lot of beer, he was really popular, but he ran into the same problem. So you see, he couldn't afford the equipment to bottle or can his beer. He had 8 to 10 beers on tap at any time, but he didn't necessarily have a way to reach his home consumers, and they wanted the beer. So, being an innovative man, he went out and bought an empty apple cider jug, and he bought a silk screen press. He put his label on the canister, and then all of a sudden the modern growler was born. He sold this to consumers. They could then come to his brewery, fill up with beer, with whatever beer he had on tap, and then they could take his beer home. He now had access to the home market. This has become the industry standard. A lot of breweries are dependent on this to reach the home market. This is how they do it. They also love this because they get high margins, profit margins on these sales. They don't have to invest in the bottling and canning equipment that's really expensive, and they can reach that home consumer market. It also provides a cheaper product for consumers. So consumers love filling up growlers. They can buy beer for cheaper costs. There's a couple of problems here. First off, there's a quality issue. It's just an empty jug. When you pour off a beer, say you go to fill up a growler on a Wednesday night and you pour off a beer, you increase the headspace there. Oxygen's in there. CO2 is going to diffuse up and out of that into that oxygen space, and it's also going to oxidize the beer. You're kind of spoiling the product. So when you go back on Friday night, you now have flat beer that's of lesser quality than when you purchased it.
There's also a huge issue with branding. So whereas a six-pack, you have individual labels on each one of these beers, with a growler, it's silk screened on there. There's only one label, and that's fixed on there. So it's not necessarily, you can't change that out. So if someone comes into your brewery with someone else's label on their growler, you're faced with this problem. Do you put your quality product into their label, or do you refuse that high margin sale? And that's increasingly a problem that these breweries are faced with today. So in order to address some of those areas, we engaged in an extensive research process. We contacted breweries throughout the US and asked them about these issues and others. And we focused our research. You can see here the map, the states in darker colors are ones with higher concentration of breweries. We focused our efforts by talking to those areas first. In total, we talked to over 100 people, and these problems came up again and again and again. And they also, the quality and the branding issues over and over, and they also led us to a couple of solutions. And that's what we've based our business on. First of all, we've addressed the branding issue. So we have an interchangeable magnetic label system. So what this does is we sell the breweries some products. So we sell, the brewery can then sell you a growler to their customers who come in that have a metallic system right there. They come in, they fill up whatever beer they want. The brewer is then able to put the label of that specific beer onto it. The person can then go home, consume the product. When they take that label off, it's most likely going to end up on the refrigerating. That's key marketing space. It's a highly competitive environment. There's 1,500 breweries set to open up right now. They've got access to that. It's a collectible item, too. If a brewery has 8 to 10 beers on tap, they have 8 to 10 labels. All of a sudden, they have 8 to 10 labels that they can be selling, these individually beers, like you would see in a six-pack. So we think that this is a great solution that can help those breweries sell more beer and get their marketing out there in this highly competitive market. So these breweries are heavily invested in their labels. You can see these guys have put a lot of time and money into developing these. They have themes there. They want to be able to sell these labels, and this all of a sudden lets them sell that label and that marketing in the growler space as well. We've also addressed the quality issue. So the way a keg system works, where you have CO2 actually pushes the beer, keeps the beer fresh. It doesn't allow oxygen in there. So we have developed a system that's adaptable to the growler. Screws on to, these are a standard thread size on growlers. Screws on there. You can put a customizable tap handle, the way that a brewery would have a customizable tap handle behind the bar. Use a standard CO2 canister that we use behind a bike pump or a pellet gun. And then it's just like you're pouring a beer off at the bar. It fills up, that CO2 going in that's pushing it. That's going to keep the beer fresh. It's not going to let it go flat. It's going to extend the shelf life. This is a high-quality product that people are buying. Increasingly, beer is higher and higher quality, and this allows them to keep that product fresh. It's also, we think, going to allow them to sell more beer to customers. So these are the suite of products that we've developed around those two problems that we're going to be able to sell to our customers. You can see 3 of them are patentable. We're in the stages of pursuing those patents right now, and we think that we can get solid margins on all of those products. So what does that look like in terms of actual sales? Well, we think there's about a $50 million market we can access right now that's just from growler fills in the US craft industry alone. When you start to account for Canada, we think that that number ramps up a little bit more. They've had a proliferating craft beer industry as well. That's a $58 million industry we can target. And when you start to look at this becoming a mainstream trend, we think that moves up to a $116 million market when you start to account for the bigger brands getting involved on this because of the higher margins. So the way our business works is we're selling directly to breweries. We're selling them products. We're also selling in an online marketplace to consumers. And then we're also selling to growler fill stations. And growler fill stations is actually where some of this is really going mainstream and pushing forward. Places like Whole Foods are rapidly installing these growler stations in their markets. Walgreens, Duane Reade, which is a chain in New York City, Fred Meyer supermarkets. You're seeing these get installed and rapidly expanding. And customers love it. People are lining up to fill up growlers. This is people waiting in line outside Denver to get in to get growlers filled up. This is becoming a more and more mainstream way. But there's still those problems, and we think that our products can help expand the market for these small and medium-sized craft breweries to address this customer demand. So of course there's competition out there. The competition right now, the building bottles, these are just the same guys that have been participating in this industry for quite a while. They're making the same growlers that Charlie Otto made back in the 1980s. Sure, the graphics are a little more fancy now, but essentially they're just selling glass bottles with silk screened art on it. There's some growler systems that are starting to incorporate CO2. You can see there's been some successful Kickstarter campaigns around these, but we think that we have an advantage in our design. We also incorporate a more elegant design with a customizable tap handle, which addresses some of the brewery's marketing concerns as well. And we think that we can really get traction with that with the breweries first. So how are we going to scale this up? Well, the brew industry provides ample opportunity for this. This is the Great American Brew Festival. 700 breweries show up to this festival every year, and there's a waiting list, hundreds of breweries long, trying to get into this. There's other national and regional competitions, which means that they also have booths here set up for companies selling products to breweries. You can get into these markets pretty quickly. You can spread your word quickly and start to get in and really scale up a business. So, this is Sunoco gas stations. In New York City, in New York State, and in South Carolina, they're starting to expand their growler fill stations. They're putting these into gas stations. You're seeing this in Oregon as well. This is becoming a mainstream phenomenon. We want to give the small and medium-sized craft breweries better access to these. We think that with our products, we can help them sell more beer, and we can really bridge that gap and get them into the markets, the home consumer markets that they currently are struggling to get into. So we are bottle branders, and we're helping to bring the brewery home.
Can I operate the appendix slide from here, too?
Okay.
I want to go first. Call me old-fashioned. I love beer. Is this legal in California?
That's a great question. So I think that really touches on the fact that there's different legal regimes in each of the states. And in California, you've seen traction. The breweries themselves actually pushed for a legal change that just Jerry Brown signed off on in November that actually expanded the growler options in California. So yes, it is legal. You can't have the gas stations necessarily in California, unfortunately. However, it is legal, and all of the breweries in Santa Barbara right now will fill up your growler.
Right. But the problem that I see, or one of the problems, is in California, a growler from Fig Mountain cannot be used at a growler at Firestone. So, okay, well, I guess you know my question. So the question is, if you use this product, do you know that the state of California will allow you to use it interchangeably between breweries?
Yeah, so that's a very California-specific question. So the legal change that just went through in November allows now, so it used to be that you had to have the silkscreen label of that brewery on the growler, and you could only go to the growler, the brewery that had that label. That's since changed. So now technically you can go to whatever brewery you want and then they have to individually label it. Currently, what you're seeing breweries do that are participating in that is they're affixing just a tag, like just a metallic tag. They're just a hang tag that goes on there. It's not elegant. It doesn't accommodate their branding issues. So in San Diego right now, the breweries have gotten together and have decided in order to accommodate that, to get more people to buy growlers and to move more commonly across, they're all going to one generic growler. Of course, that doesn't give them the branding options, but this is a legal beer label that you would see that they can put on any beer, so it does address the legal concerns.
And how much is that bottle going to cost a brewer versus what they're paying now for this massive generic bottle that they're buying?
Yeah, another good question. So they can currently purchase these. It depends on the extent of the art that they buy on it, and extends. There's a number of variables. They could purchase them for as low as $3, really simple, and they could purchase them for as high as $12. You're seeing the higher end ones. We think that we're gonna try to price this at around $7, which incorporates the label as well and the ability to sell those labels, individual labels for each of the line of beers that they have.
So I guess I like the idea. I think it's great. My concern is that, is this market big enough for somebody else with this kind of product? I think I understand where you think the advantages are, but when I look at that slide that you put up of competitors, it's already pretty busy for a $100 million market.
Yeah. So I think that's a great question. I think with the patent protection would give us a bit of a leg up on everyone else. We think that that it's simply a better product with patent protection that we could get a leg up in that market. Obviously, some are going to continue to just go with the standard labeling system. But we think that this really addresses those concerns and could actually, allow us to capture the market share of the product.
Well, the question is size of your potential market, because the guy who makes the bottle is going to charge you for the bottle, and I mean, how much money can you make on a bottle of beer? 50 cents, a quarter? And it's not repeatable, is it?
Your average brewery is currently paying about 5 cents to produce a pint of beer. And for us, as he said, this comes in at, if you buy it over 300, which is what your typical brewery is buying them in terms of quantity, at $3.50. And like he said, that ranges up depending on if you want to go with a more customized growler or the graphics. But the way we've set up our sales, we get about a 50% contribution margin for the growler with the steel plate itself. And every line in our suite of products ranges in between about 37 to 56% in contribution margins. So we think as long as we can get the volume of sales, we'll have no problem recovering our costs and starting to hit a profit.
And it seems that the recurring stream from the labels is a big piece of that, right? I mean, most of these guys have multiple brands and flavors, and that changes over time. But I don't know what your patent protection is, but is it on the label where somebody can't just knock that off and use your bottles and put their labels on? So, I mean, how strong is that?
Yeah.
What we're looking to do is patent not the labels. This won't be able to be patented itself. This is just a standard printed magnet. But we'll have what we're exploring right now and in the process of patenting any bottle or anything that will allow this to stick to it. So fundamentally, we're hoping that we will be the new wave of growlers, especially as you see in the Whole Foods, the Duane Reads, all these stores where it's not the brewer or the craft creator or the person that's making the beer present. So you'll have a wall of 30 beers, and you could either have, as a brewer, the customer come in with an empty growler and leave with an empty growler and share it with their friends, and no one would know what you're drinking. Or now with all these growler filler stations, you go in, hopefully this becomes the industry standard for that very reason, and the brewer is going to want the magnets at the Whole Foods and at the Duane Reads. So as that customer leaves, they're now leaving with not only the name of the brewery, but that specific style of beer as well. And absolutely, to your point, we think the interchangeable magnetic label and the repetition and price on that is what will drive the revenue model.
Can this work on growlets?
Yeah, absolutely. So the different sizes of the magnets can totally depend on it can be printed off the way the brewer needs it.
I'm just amazed there's a business like
maybe I should explain. Growlet is a smaller version of the standard growler size, usually half the size.
Oh, good luck.
Any more questions?
I mean, why limit it to beer? Why don't you do cider and everything else in the world too?
Yeah, so we actually we believe wine is moving in the way of bulk format as well. So there's wine growlers, which we think we could expand into as well. There's also just cold pressed coffee. You're seeing people buy these in bulk. So kind of all the bulk options that are available, we think we can expand into all of those markets.
All right. Just two words of advice to you guys when you pitch to investors. 2 words: free samples. Yeah. Just remember that. So round of applause for Bottle Branders.